The next paragraph. Did these prejudices prevail only among the meanest and lowest of the people? Perhaps they might be excused. Now, the writer is talking about the prejudices related to patriotism. There is a tendency among the people to praise their own country to the sky and run down other countries, criticize other countries blindly. He calls this a prejudice. Now the writer is asking, did these prejudices prevail only among the meanest or the lowest or illiterates or the uneducated? Then they might be forgiven. They can be forgiven, or that can be ignored, that can be overlooked because they have few. Who are they here? The meanest, the lowest, the uneducated, and the illiterate. They have few, no, if any, opportunities of correcting them by reading, traveling, or conversing with foreigners. Suppose an uneducated man, suppose a poor man, an illiterate in a place, in a village, has these beliefs, has these prejudices, you can just forgive him, you can just pardon him because he does not have any opportunities of correcting his prejudices by reading about other countries, by traveling to other countries, by talking or discussing with foreigners. If a villager is confined to his small village, then he will have these misconceptions. He cannot read some books, he cannot talk to some foreigners, he cannot visit other countries to correct his false beliefs. It is impossible. So, if an uneducated man has these beliefs, prejudices, you can just ignore. But the misfortune is that they, in fact, these prejudices spoil the minds, in fact, poison the minds and influence the conduct even of a gentleman. Now, the writer says that these prejudices are normally found among educated gentlemen, and these prejudices, in fact, poison the minds and influence the conduct behavior of our educated gentlemen. That is quite unfortunate. Of those, I mean, who have every title to this appellation here, name, title. What is the title? The title of a gentleman. So he says, I mean, those who have every right to be called a gentleman. Whom do you call a gentleman? A man who behaves well, a man who talks well, a man who is educated, okay, a learned man, a scholar, right? So, highly educated man is often called a gentleman. Now, the writer says that those who have every right to be called a gentleman, but an exemption from this prejudice. So, if there is a gentleman, I expect him to be exempted from this kind of prejudices. What's a prejudice here? Criticizing other countries and blindly praising his own country, or prejudices related to extreme nationalism, extreme patriotism. So he should be exempted from this prejudice, which, however, in my opinion, ought to be regarded as a characteristic mark of a gentleman. The writer says that a gentleman, a real gentleman, a true gentleman should not have these prejudices. If a gentleman, if an educated man has got these prejudices, then you cannot call him a gentleman. A thorough gentleman, a real gentleman, a true gentleman should be exempted from these prejudices. Otherwise, we cannot strictly call him a gentleman. And he says this should be the characteristic mark of a gentleman. What is a characteristic mark? Mark means a feature. What's a feature? He should be exempted from prejudices. Because for let a man's birth be ever so high, his station ever so exalted, his fortune ever so large, yet if he is not free from national and other prejudices, I should make bold to tell him that he had a low and vulgar mind. So if there is a man who is so exalted, his position is exalted to begin with. If there is a man whose birth is very, very high, suppose there is a man who is born in an aristocratic family or rich family, an educated family. If a man's birth is so high and his his position, status so exalted high, and his fortune ever so large, he is a very, very rich man. Still, if he is not free from national and other prejudices, I should make bold to tell him, I will take the courage to tell him, I should tell him confidently, courageously that he has a low, very mean and vulgar, dirty mind, and he had no just claim to the character of a gentleman. Suppose I come across a man who is born in a rich family, a man who is in a high position, a man who is very rich, and if he is not free from, such a man is not free from national and other prejudices, I will courageously, confidently tell him, Mr. Gentleman, your mind is very low, mean, vulgar, and you have no claim to the character of a gentleman. You can't be called a gentleman. And in fact, you will always find that those are most likely to boast of national merit. Boast of here, talk proudly about national merit. So, in fact, you will always come across, find that those who talk about their national merit very proudly have little or no merit of their own to depend on. So, now the writer makes a very, very important remark. What is that? He says that a man who has nothing to boast of himself, if a man has nothing to talk about or no merit, personal merit to talk about, if a man does not have any personal achievements or success stories of his own to talk about, then he is likely to talk about national merit proudly. When a man has nothing to talk about, when a man does not have any personal achievements to boast of, brag of, then he is likely to talk about his country. Then he is likely to talk about, boast of his national merit or patriotism, who have little or no merit of their own to depend upon. Suppose a man has got so many success stories, if he has scripted many success stories, if a man has accomplished many great things, then he will not have to talk about patriotism quite often. Than which to be sure, nothing is more natural. Now, the writer says that if a man has got his own achievements to talk about, his own merit to talk about, then he will not find enough time to boast of the national merit. Who normally talks blindly about national merit? Those men who have nothing to talk about, nothing else to talk about. If a man has got his own achievements, he will rarely talk about his own country blindly. The slender, he gives an example here. The slender here, slim, thin, vine creeper goes around the strong, sturdy oak tree. Now, the writer is talking about a creeper. What kind of a creeper? Thin, very slender, very slim creeper. It goes around a sturdy, strong tree. Oak is a tree for no other reason in the world because it has no strength sufficient to support itself. Now, the writer says that a very weak creeper goes around a strong tree because it has no personal strength. It does not have its own strength to support itself. Similarly, a man who is very weak, a man who has nothing to boast of, then he will talk about, then he will rely on, then he will bang upon nationalism or his country. He'll always talk about his country. Why does he talk about his country every time? Always because he has nothing else to talk about. He has no personal achievements. That's a tragedy. Should it be alleged? If it is alleged that in defense of national prejudice, that is a natural and necessary growth of love to our country. Some people defend national prejudice, justify national prejudice by saying that it is a natural and necessary growth of love to one country, love to our country. Now, the writer says, if it is alleged, suppose some people say that, justify national prejudice by saying that it is a natural and necessary growth of one's love to his own country, that is wrong. That therefore it cannot be destroyed without hurting the latter. Some people say that national prejudice is a natural growth of love to our own country and it cannot be destroyed. What cannot be destroyed? National prejudice cannot be destroyed without hurting the latter. What is the latter? The second thing, love to our own country. Okay, love of one's own country. Now the writer says, I answer that this is a gross fallacy and delusion. This is a false notion. Fallacy and delusion here. False belief, false opinion, false view, wrong view. So the writer says, if somebody tries to justify national prejudice by saying that it is a natural and necessary growth of love to one's own country and therefore it cannot be destroyed without destroying the love of one's country, my answer would be that it is wrong. That is a gross a great fallacy, wrong. It's a great mistake and delusion, false belief. I accept the first part of the argument. What's the first part of the argument? It is a growth of love of our own country, no doubt. See, national prejudice comes out of one's love for his own country, there's no doubt. But that it is a natural and necessary growth of it, I absolutely deny. There is no doubt that it is a growth of love to our country, no doubt. But if somebody says that it is a natural growth, it is a necessary growth of one's love to his country, then I absolutely say wrong. I absolutely say that it is wrong. I absolutely deny. Superstition and enthusiasm too are the growth of religion. So now look at another subject. The writer brings in another subject. He says, think of religion. Religion is like a tree, no doubt. Superstition and enthusiasm. What is superstition? Blind belief. Enthusiasm, passion. Okay, great passion. Superstition and passion are the growth of religion. There's no doubt. Superstition comes out of religion. Extreme enthusiasm also derives from religion, no doubt. But whoever took it in his head to affirm that the necessary growth of this noble principle. What is a great principle? Religion. Religion is a great noble principle. If somebody says that superstition and enthusiasm are the natural growth of religion, natural and necessary growth of religion, then it would be wrong. They are, what are they here? Superstition and enthusiasm, if you will, they are the bastard, illegitimate, illegal growth or sprouts of heavenly plant. Now, what's a heavenly plant here? Religion. Religion is described as a heavenly plant. And the writer says that superstition and enthusiasm are the bastard children of, illegitimate children of religion. not the natural children. In the same way, national prejudice is a bastard child of one's love to his country. It is not the natural child, it is a bastard child. They are enthusiasm and superstition are the bastard sprouts or children of this heavenly plant. It is not natural and genuine branches. These two are superstition and enthusiasm are not the natural and genuine branches of the tree called religion. Religion is compared to a tree. It has got so many branches. It has got its natural and genuine branches. But the writer says superstition and enthusiasm are not the natural and genuine branches. They are the illegitimate, illegal, bastard children of or sprouts of or branches of this tree. So, and may safely enough be lopped off. Now the writer says that these branches, what branches? Not the natural branches, not the genuine branches, but the bastard branches, illegitimate branches should be lopped off, cut. That should be removed without doing any harm to the parent stock here, trunk, the tree, plant. The writer says now that the unnatural branches, illegitimate branches, illegal branches, bastard branches can always be cut down, chopped off without doing any harm to the tree, the real tree. What is the real tree here? Religion. And not just that, perhaps till once they are lopped off, and the writer goes on to say that unless these unnatural branches are cut off, chopped off, this goodly tree can never flourish in perfect health and vigor. The writer says, unless we cut off, unless we remove, unless we chop off the bad branches, the illegitimate branches, then the tree can never be flourish. What is the tree here? The tree is religion. To enable religion to have nice growth, good growth, then the illegal branches should be cut off. What are the illegal branches here? Superstition and enthusiasm. Similarly, if patriotism should grow like a tree, its unnatural, illegitimate branches should be cut down. What are the illegitimate branches here? Blind prejudices, blind national prejudice, bias, prejudices should be cut down. So, if patriotism, love for one's own country has to grow, then bastard children should be killed. Next para, citizen of the world. Is it not very possible that I may love my own country without hating the natives of other countries? Now the writer is asking a straightforward question. Let me ask you something. Is it not possible that I can love my own country without hating the neighbors, without hating the natives of other countries? In India, can't we love our own country without hating Americans, without hating Europeans, or without hating the people of other Asian countries? Can't we do that? We can do that. We should do it. That I may exert the most heroic bravery, I may display, I may have the most heroic bravery, the most undaunted here, very strong resolution, determination, resolution here, firmness in defending its laws and liberty without despising all the rest of the world as cowards and poltroons. Now the writer says, is it not possible for us to love our own country without hating the natives of other countries, foreign countries? So can't we love our own country without hating the foreigners of foreign countries, foreign nations? I can put on the most heroic bravery, the most undaunted here, very strong, very strong resolution, determination, decision in defending its laws and liberty. See, I can go to any extent, or I can very, very strongly defend the laws and liberty of my own country without hating, despising all the rest of the world as cowards. So, without calling the people of other countries as cowards and poltroons के utter cowards, those who have no courage, I can say that I can very easily, very strongly say that my country is the best, no doubt, without hating, without calling the people of other countries poltroons, cowards, utter cowards, but most certainly it is, if it were not, but why need I suppose what is absolutely impossible if it were not? Most certainly it is. It is means here it is possible. What is possible? One can love his own country without hating the natives of other countries. Most certainly it is possible. If it is not possible, why I need suppose what is absolutely impossible? Like this is possible. Why should I talk about something that is impossible? I'm not talking about something absolutely impossible. I'm talking about something possible. What is that? Most if it were not, I must admit, I must agree, I should prefer the title of the ancient philosopher, namely citizen of the world. So to that of an Englishman, a Frenchman, a European, or to any other title whatsoever. Now the writer says, if it is not possible, but if it were not possible, I should prefer the title of the ancient philosopher. Now what did the ancient philosophers say? When somebody asks him which country he belongs to, he says that I am a citizen of the world. Now the writer says that if it is not possible to love our own country without hating the people of other countries, I should go with the ancient philosopher who courageously said that he is a citizen of the world. And I would prefer to call myself a citizen of the world to that of an Englishman, a Frenchman, or European, or any other title whatsoever. So I won't be happy to call myself an Englishman, a Frenchman, or a European, or I won't be happy to have any other title if I have to hate the people of other countries to love my own country. So if loving one's own country is not possible without hating the people of other countries, I would love to say that I would love to go with the philosopher who courageously said so many centuries ago that he would prefer to call himself a citizen of the world. So the writer says that if he cannot love his own country without hating the people of other countries, he would prefer the title of the ancient philosopher who courageously said that he was a citizen of the world. So if this is not possible, I would like to be known as a citizen of the world rather than an Englishman, a Frenchman, or a European.